Perfect. All right, let's get started. Parents, welcome. This is the parent meeting for track season 2022. As you can see, we have our new logo, and I'll start by one point of clarification with that. Just so you know, in athletic.net and USATF, we're still Whittier Warriors. That hasn't been changed, even though we're going by West Coast Warriors now. So in case you have any questions about that, I know there was some confusion with the USATF registrations. There is no West Coast Warriors. It's still Whittier Warriors there, so make sure you select that, and we'll cover that in a little bit. Okay, so let's get going. This is the agenda for today, so you can, I won't read through all of this, but just have some idea. Jorge, can you go on mute? We can hear a lot of background noise coming from your line. Jorge, can you go on mute? Okay. Everyone can go on mute. We can hear some background noise, and it's going to be very difficult to do this. You can mute her. Okay, Ernie, we can hear you as well. Can you go on mute? Okay. All right. This is the agenda we'll be covering today. We'll go over coaches, we'll go over USATF membership and so on. I won't read all of these, but just to give you an idea of what we'll be covering. At the end, we'll pause for questions if there's items we didn't cover that you'd like to cover. Obviously, keep in mind, these are topics that are general to the whole team. If you have very specific individual topics for your kids, we can cover those, at practice or set up a one-on-one time where we can go over those. But we'll try to cover kind of the general stuff for the whole team. All right, coaches and staffing. Myself, I'm the head coach, David Rojas. We have assistant coaches, or what we typically call group coaches. As many of you know, and if you're new, you're kind of seeing this now, we divide the team into 5 groups. Groups are based on both coaching style and ability or experience with running. And so we have different coaches there. So we kind of continue to grow in the number of coaches that we have. These are the coaches that are kind of our, if you want to say, full-time coaches that are out there helping. We'll give you a better view on who's assigned to what group in a little bit. But this is our coaching staff for now. Now, we do need, and we do get a ton of parent support when it comes to the running groups. So we have a lot of parents that run with the groups, and that's super important, super helpful. I can tell you, parents, especially if you're new, right, and you're not aware of this, we not only allow or are okay with you hanging out at practice and running with the kids, we actually really prefer this, and it's a big support for us. So if you're a runner yourself, if you want to start running, you want to run with your kids, or even just jump into another group, that's more than fine. The coaches can use the help. Just make sure you communicate with coaches so they're aware that you're running and that you're part of the team. And we need help, especially covering the front and the back and the middle, and make sure no kids are running, anywhere where they're away from adult supervision. So that's a huge help. I can tell you monkey and rabbit group are the biggest groups we have typically, and this year is no difference. So if your kids are in that group and you want to help out, please speak to those coaches as they can use more assistance there. New coaches, we're actually looking for at least 1, if not maybe 2 coaches that can actually kind of take the role as coach, meaning not just kind of run with the kids at practice, but help us during meet for coaching meetings after practice. That's kind of take more of a, so to speak, full-time role with that. So if you have any interest in that, we don't need, years and years of coaching experience. We don't need a resume when it comes to coaching. We do need people that like to hang out with kids and work well with kids, and just that you can put forth the time and the effort. And we'd appreciate the help too. As we continue to grow, we've got to make sure we support the kids in that way. All right, let's get right into USATF membership. This is super important and very timely right now. The due date for this is next Wednesday, right? But the sooner the better you can get this done. So if you're a returning parent, right, with kids that were in the program before, all you have to do is make sure you've renewed it. And for those of you that renewed it back in December, you're fine, right? If you haven't renewed it yet, there's still time. Go ahead and do that. And you should be able to go back and renew it. If you renew it, it's really easy. You're already attached to the team. But double check that you're attached to Whittier Warriors Track Club. That's officially how it'll come up on there. Check your Sunday email for the actual team number if you need it. But usually you just renew it. You've already done, hopefully you've already done age verification. So it's a really simple process, but we need to get that done. If you're a new parent, so new kids on the team, you'll have to get a new membership. Again, follow the information on the Sunday email in terms of how to do that. There's a link there. There's also the team number and name. Make sure you attach to the team. If you just signed up for a USATF membership and you don't want to assign to the team, we have no way of seeing that. We're not the USATF, that's a separate organization. It is our, if you want to say, our umbrella organization over all the teams. We only see the ones that are assigned to our team. So if we don't see it, our assumption is that you don't have it. And as of next Wednesday, no kid, returner or new, can come to practice, events, races, anything until that is done. That covers our liability insurance, and it also allows us to participate in any USATF event. So if you have any concerns, questions, or problems with that, please, speak up before Wednesday. After Wednesday midnight, we will, we'll kind of close that up at that point. So take a look at it, give it a shot. It's pretty easy. Many of the other parents, returning parents, have done it, and they can probably help you more than I can, but we'll make sure and get you some help there. What else? Age verification comes with that, right? So if you're a new runner, or if you're returning and you haven't done age verification for some reason, that has to be in place as well. That is what allows kids to participate in the postseason and many of the A meets, and we'll go over that in a little bit, what that means. But later on in the season, they will not allow us to even register your kids into those events without that being completed. Okay, and that's just an issue of fairness, right? So kids run in the correct age group. Right, any questions about USATF membership before we move on? I know that's a big one. Okay.
I have a quick question here.
Oh, sure.
My daughter was registered with USATF last season. She was attached to Whittier Warriors last season. We renewed the membership, but her affiliation with the club somehow disappeared.
Right.
We've reached out via email to the USATF contact. I'm not sure if that's the right avenue to pursue in trying to reattach to Whittier Warriors. Is there another approach in order to get her?
Have they not responded at all?
Right.
Yeah, I know. It's so sometimes calling the office directly is a little easier if you actually get somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done it with some, but we had an issue with, part of the reason why that happened probably is because we had an issue renewing the team's formal USATF membership. And then I finally, after our emails and all kinds of stuff and voicemails, I finally called, got a hold of somebody, and within seconds they fixed it, which drove me crazy. But yeah, you may want to try to call parents that are returning parents that have done this before. Again, I haven't done this in years, but is there a way within the council itself to reattach? Does anybody know that? Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. Because there might be it in the portal, and I can ask that question too and try to find out, and I'll post about that if I get any new information. But for now, we'll try calling. But that's a good point.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, shoes, uniforms, and gear. This one's important. It's normally for new parents, but good refresher for everybody. Shoes that should be worn at practice, meaning training shoes, meaning every time we run, with the exception of the actual races, and in some cases the races as well, it should be a training running shoe. It shouldn't be a cross trainer, it shouldn't be a sneaker, it shouldn't be a spike or a flat or any other type of shoe. So 97% of the time the kids will be running in a trainer. So make sure when you go to a running shoe store or to Big Five or something, make sure it's a trainer that they come to practice with and use on a regular basis. Shoes are important. They do protect kids from getting injured. It's important to keep them updated too. So the rule of thumb has always been about 300 miles on a shoe. And so it all depends on what group the kids are, how much mileage they're running. But I mean, for those of you that are runners, you know that about 300, 350 miles, you start to feel the difference in the shoe. And it's not just discomfort, it could lead to injuries as well. So make sure shoes are kept updated. Racing flat and spikes. So what we normally say is if your kids are brand new to the program, and especially if they're young, don't worry too much about flats and spikes, right? First year kid that's 8 years old, first of all, finding a shoe that'll fit them is hard. So anything that's size 3 or lower, not that they don't exist, they exist, but they're really hard to find sometimes. Not to mention too, the other factor is there is a pretty well-known coaching philosophy that if you're at a certain performance level, a spike especially won't actually help you, it'll hurt you. So kids that are brand new and are just getting into it, let them run under trainers, let them feel comfortable, let them get some experience, and then we can introduce them to spikes and flats as they get kind of progress in the program. So again, your younger kids, your newer kids, don't worry too much about it. at least not right now. As they progress through the season and they move up into like rabbit, jaguar, and eagle, then absolutely, then we're gonna really push for them to have spikes and flats for the races. We're in track season, so spikes are what they normally will race in. By the way, it's 3/16 spikes. They usually come with the 1/4-inch ones. I'm not sure why, but those, for anywhere I know around here, at least in California, on the other all-weather tracks, they will not allow them to use those longer spikes. So something to keep in mind. But again, if you have specific questions, we can talk one-on-one at practice and so on about your kids and whether they should be getting them or not. Talk to the coaches as well. But that's a general rule of thumb. Uniform orders, oh, that's an old thing. So actually, it's funny, it coincided again. Uniform orders and gear orders, they are due today. There's old and new uniforms, right? So keep in mind, the new uniform is the black uniform. The white is an old uniform at this point. So even returners, right, make sure you've ordered your new uniforms. They now come with shorts. In the past, it was just the top. Now it's the top and the shorts. So make sure that's done, and make sure that's done by tonight, right? The deadline's tonight. We can't wait, because the problem is if we wait for your order, right, you can say it was only 2 days late. We're holding up literally over 100 other kids that need to place an order, and we need to try to get uniforms especially in as quickly as possible so they can actually wear them at races. And again, try to support parents, not just for the kids, but if you want to get sweatshirts and t-shirts, it's always nice to kind of show that team spirit at the meets that we're going to be going to. Rollers, golf balls, sticks, and all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of things, and we're going to do a better job this season of introducing the kids to these things. If you're runners, you know what I'm talking about. But foam rollers, you can find them for 20 bucks, you know, 20 to 30 bucks, a good foam roller. Those are really nice. We'll try to show the kids how to use them. Golf balls for like the bottom of the foot is really good. The stick, I'm not a big fan of, but it works, right? And the nice thing about the stick is that it's super portable. You throw it in a backpack, kids can take it to meets. And so on and so forth. So again, we'll post more about that throughout the season and try to bring some of these items to practice so the kids get an idea of what they are and how to use them. Lights, right now the hour hasn't changed yet, so it's dark during, you know, the majority of the practice. Make sure kids bring lights with them. It just helps. I mean, it's dark out there. The cement's not always even to the point that they see where they're going. So let's try to get lights on them for now. When the hour changes, we should be in a better position. But for now, that's just what we have to work with. All right, any general questions here before we move on? All right, communication, this is a big one, right? I mean, obviously this parent meeting hopefully is providing some good information. But outside of this, the Facebook is what we use to try to provide the most information and the most timely information. So if you're not part of our Facebook group page, please make sure you are. There's a lot of new kids, a lot of new parents, and only a portion of that have joined the group. Make sure you join, because you're going to miss a ton of important information. I know some people don't like social media, but make up a fake account, call it Mickey Mouse, and just get in there so you can see the updates. The weekly emails, so on Sundays, every Sunday, unless we're traveling for a team trip or something, we'll put out a Sunday email that has all the information you need for that week and then some. If for some reason we forget something, please reply to me. And if some of you have in the past, it's like, oh shoot, forgot that, we'll add it in there. But the only problem with the weekly email is that it's a weekly email, right? So if we tell you meet at 8 o'clock next Saturday for the meet, and something changes and the race director says, hey, we're starting an hour early, we're not going to send out another email. We're going to update you on Facebook. So if you're not there, you're not going to see that update, and you will arrive an hour late for that meet. So please make sure you're receiving the email. First of all, if you're not, reach out to me, text me, email me, so just say, hey, I'm not getting it, here's my email address. By the way, we're using the emails from registration. So if you use a spam email because you don't want to get spammed with a bunch of stuff, I know a lot of people do that, then you're not getting the emails. We need a real email that you're actually going to be looking at on a regular basis. You will get it every Sunday. We try not to send anything else besides every Sunday, and then you'll get something from us at the start of next season trying to remind you for registration, and that is it. We don't use it for anything else. What else? Yeah, and if you have like multiple parents and you want to add emails, do that as well, and we'll continue to add those as we go. By the way, returning parents, the email list from last season is gone. So every season we get rid of it, we start from scratch. So if last season you gave me 3 extra emails, they're now gone. I need those again. So we press it out, and the reason we do that is because we have a lot of kids who didn't return, and we have parents that get upset, like, get me off this thing, and so on. So we flush that out, and we use registration for the new series of emails. Text works great. I'm on calls a lot at my job, so it's hard for me to answer phone calls. Text messages work great. Even if I'm on call, at least I can reply and say, hey, I'm on a call right now, I can't talk, but here's your answer, or can we talk later? But again, feel free to call me. I just may not be able to answer. I will tell you, parents, I won't answer the phone after 8 o'clock. I go to sleep around 8:45 or 9. Yeah, you can make fun of me, but I get up at 4. And also that's kind of like quiet time and watching TV and hanging out with the family time. So, but during the day, text me, we can set up some time, we can talk if you need to talk. Facebook Messenger, I've always told people don't send me messages there. People always do, so I'm going to cave now. I'm going to say I will respond to that. I'm going to do better at watching for that. I know sometimes that's the easiest way because we're on Facebook already. So I will try to respond to those better, but I still tell you text messages work better. I will get those right away. Team talks after practice. So sometimes we get into smaller groups, right? We'll go to each of the groups, or maybe pull aside the 8 and unders, or the 9 and 10s, or the 11, 12s, and talk to them. Again, parents, we're super open for you guys. If we do that, we're not telling parents to go away. See, but come and join us. That's fine. As long as you don't interfere, right, with the conversation. Come and listen, because everything the kids are learning, you hear, and you can help us reinforce it. And also you're aware of what we're telling the kids, right? So that's always very open to do that. But we do have team talks here and there for different reasons with each of the teams. Either the coaches are having it themselves, or I'll be bouncing around from group to group to do that as well. Wednesday, we try to do parent updates. So around 6:30, it's usually like 6:35, 6:40. It's hard to, depending on, as we go progress through the season, the upper group, so to speak, like Jaguar and Eagle, will take longer to finish. So we will try to get all parents together somewhere in the middle, right? So dog, you may have to wait a little bit for us, so don't leave, try to stay for updates. We will update you on things from the weekly email that might have changed there as well. We might be able to have more of a dialogue and answer questions a little bit better there as well. Parents from Jaguar and Eagle, if you're kind of still waiting on your kids and you see us gathering, come and listen while you wait for your kids. Again, one-on-ones, if you need to set them up, we will. We've done that. We've done Zoom calls before, we do phone calls before. If there's specific issues, or after practice, great time to talk as well. And then social media, make sure you follow us, if anything, just to kind of help us get the word out on different things. And also, you know, there'll be different announcements like fundraisers and things like that on there. All right, any questions about communication? Practicing groups. So really quickly on this, there's always a lot of questions, especially with new parents on the groups and how we do this. And I'll be honest with you, the reason this developed the way it did was that early on, we had 11 kids. It didn't matter. We didn't have separate groups. We had one group and we all practiced together, regardless of age, regardless of experience, regardless of ability. None of that really mattered. But as time went on, and by time went on, I mean literally a few months, we had kids of very disparate ages and ability. And it didn't make sense, right? We have a kid that can run a 6-minute mile, and a kid that, you know, that's never run in their life, and they're 6 years old and they're just trying to get around the track, right? It just didn't make sense, and we had to start breaking them up and figuring out as the team continued to grow. We also realized that coaching kids at different age groups, different experiences, different, you know, aptitudes or attitudes towards running is very, very different. And so over time, we developed these 5 groups. Dog is all about just kids that are new. They tend to be younger, but not always. They could be just brand new to running, but they're definitely new. It's all about making running fun. So parents, if your kids are in dog, and really don't expect us to be out there going like, come on, you're going to qualify for this, you're going to make this, and you're going to improve, and we're going to work you hard. That's not going to happen in that group. We need them to improve enough to get to the other groups before we start having those type of conversations. It really is about making fun. Very soon the kids will, in dog, will have like Fridays, they usually do like a game or something like that. It's usually an active game to keep them kind of getting stronger in that sense in terms of cardiovascular. But it is about making it fun and make sure they come back, right? And they continue to improve and then move up to other levels. Monkey is really now beginning to see, you know, so these are really kids that can run at least 2 miles without stopping. They've maybe played other sports or done running before or something, but they're definitely in some better shape. And we are now focused on not necessarily competing against other runners, but competing against themselves, right? Improving what we call PRs, right? Personal records or PBs, personal best, trying to beat their former self on themselves. And so there's a lot of focus on that, but it's still keeping it light, keeping it fun. We do start being a little bit more about like, hey, you need to listen, and the discipline involved in coaching and athletes and things like that. And obviously there's more running to be done compared to dog. Then we get into rabbit. Rabbit is basically, the best way to describe it, it's a transition group from running is fun to now I'm going to go out there and compete and try to win or try to beat other teams or other runners. So we begin to introduce those concepts. It's not just about improving your time, but hey, what about beating that teammate that usually beats you? Or how about that kid from the other team that's, you know, a little bit ahead of you, and beginning to kind of get that competitive mental state in the kids. And we do that, you know, in a light way. We definitely now start talking more about discipline and paying attention and doing things correctly, right? So not just doing hurdles and finishing and going home, but doing them correctly, pausing, saying, no, you got to correct that. That's not right. And so there's more of that, but it's still, you know, very, very light. And it's, again, a very transition type group. And the expectation is that they can run 3 miles without stopping. And there is more of a pace concern. So between monkey and rabbit, eventually they're running at the end of the season or even midway through the season, they're running about the same, but rabbit's going to be a little bit faster pace for that group. Also, I'll start mentioning that at rabbit, we'll hold any 8 and unders. So if your child is an 8 and under, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit, we won't let them pass rabbit. And we learned that from previous seasons and kids that have gone past, because they have the ability to do it, just because they have the ability, but a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old running the mileage that Jaguar and Eagle run just doesn't work, right? And so we'll hold them there. Same with Jaguar, we'll hold 9 and 10s at Jaguar before they get to Eagle. After 11 and 12, it's kind of a wherever they fit, right, in terms of performance and all of the other factors. By the way, USATF age groups are done by whatever age your child is at the end of the year, December 31st. So you may say, wait, why is my kid 9-10 if he's only 8 today? He may be 8 today, but if he turns 9 on December 30th or even December 31st, he is officially a 9-10-year-old and will compete in the 9-10-year-old division. So just keep that in mind. It gets a little confusing, but that's how the divisions are formed around the country. Moving on to Jaguar. Jaguar and Eagle are now become our true racing competitive teams. The focus in Jaguar now is absolutely competing against other runners, against other teams, looking at qualifying for regionals, qualifying for nationals. We're now focused on time and performance, placement on races. There is definitely a different mindset. There's much more discipline. There's much more preparation for like strategy and racing and things of that nature. And we're going to be a little bit more strict with them at this point. For example, in dog, if a kid misses practice and they show up the next week, we're going to say we missed you, but that's it. If a Jaguar or Eagle miss practice, we're going to say, where were you? You missed practice. And parents, just so you know, we don't do this to be mean, but there's really no excuse for a kid to miss practice, right? That doesn't mean there really isn't, right? Of course they could be sick. We know that. And as parents, you have 110% say on when they come and when they don't come, right? But as coaches, we're always going to question why they didn't come. Oh, I had to go to this. Oh, you had practice too, didn't you? Right. And so that's what begins to change as they progress through the program and get to Eagle. Like I said, once we get to Eagle, absolutely, these kids are now training to break team records, are training to qualify for regionals and nationals. Advancing and moving through the postseason is super important, competing. And then the last bit for Eagle, really, we tend to have our older kids here, is preparation for high school and competition in high school. So we will prep them to, you know, more or less how high school coaches will coach and making sure they kind of have the expectations there. We'll begin to hold them more to that kind of stuff. Like, you showed up late today, you're doing push-ups, right? If a kid in monkey shows up late, they're not doing push-ups, right? Kid in Eagle shows up, they're probably going to do push-ups. So it's just one of the expectations that in high school is very typical, and we'll start getting them ready for that. All right, I'll pause there. Any questions on this? Because it's usually some. Group sorting, we kind of already talked about this, but and it's also in the Sunday newsletter, right? Just all the factors that we use when we make these decisions, and talk to all the coaches. We literally took us all weekend to figure out the group sorting. It's not an easy thing. It's not simply numerical, right? So it is by age. Age is a factor. Running age, meaning how long have they been running? That is a factor. Performance is a factor, meaning the time they got at the time trial. Practice pace, you know, basically the ability to keep up, right? There could be a kid that races great at every race, but at practice, they struggle to keep up with the group for whatever reason. Could be because they really do struggle. Sometimes it's because they don't want to keep up. Some, you know, it could be 1,000 read. It could be because they have a very busy day and they're exhausted when they come to practice. Doesn't matter the reason, it's still a safety concern if they can't keep up, right? So that becomes a factor. Competitive nature, right? Some kids are super competitive. They're like 6-year-olds that are out there to, like, you know, win the world, right? And there's 13-year-olds that are not. They just don't want to compete. They like winning, but they don't want to compete. Right? And so all of that will vary where we place them to make sure they get the experience that's appropriate for them. Right? Any questions on this? I know it's kind of repetitive, but just in case. All right, races and schedules. So at the end, I'll show you where it is, but a lot of you already know the calendar is on our website, and there's a link on the weekly newsletter to it. And it looks something like this is actually this season's, even though we'll continue to add things to it. But just to make sure you understand how to use it, date is self-explanatory, the event itself. All runners is the one that gets a little confusing for whether or not all runners participate in these things. Obviously, most things are going to be all the way down, except for certain events. So USATF races, so these are the official USATF races that we participate in. That's going to be a selected number of runners that will go. So the 180 runners in our team will not all go to USATF. They must qualify based on performance and based on the age group they are in order to attend those races. And I'll tell you, the reason we did this, because the very first season when we started, we didn't know any better, right? We just showed up with the team and the team of 11 runners at USATF meets. And back in those days, we had our butts handed to us. And sure, as a coach and as a team in general, that's normal, right? We're starting off, it's the beginning. It's a different story now, but back then, the biggest impact wasn't to coaches or to parents, it was to the kids. The kids walked out of those stadiums with their heads down and literally beat up, not physically, but emotionally, because they were being lapped in races. Some kids got lapped twice in a race. And that's just not a good experience for a new runner that's just beginning to get into this, right? They walk out of the door and like, what did I do? Why am I joining this if I'm going to get slaughtered every time? Our region and our association for the USATF here in California, just so new parents know, it is by far the most competitive region in the entire country. We have national record holders, national champions, all within 20 miles of here. So it is not an easy thing to just walk in out of the blue. So we're going to make sure kids are prepared. We will publish those times as we get closer to the first one to make sure you're aware of the times they have to hit at the time trials to participate in those. But it'll still be a lot of kids. So I'm not saying it's going to be 10 kids. It's going to be, it could be 90 kids for that matter. So it's going to be a lot of a team, but we won't take everybody. So that's what selected means. Later on in the postseason, it'll say qualified. Those are kids that have qualified for those events, and those starting with the association championships, you have to hit a certain time, and I'll show you what those are right now, and I'll publish those on the weekly newsletter as well. Super early. They have to hit those during an A meet, and I'll explain right now what that means. Let me just make sure there's nothing else about the calendar. Location, time. As you can see, there's a lot of TBAs right now because those race directors have not published any information besides the day. So once we get that, we'll update the calendar, and so keep looking in there weekly, and we'll try to let you know if there's updates. Picture day is in here, so not just races, right? Picture day, fundraisers, like the Smoke and Fire Eatery and so on, those all will appear here. So use the calendar as kind of the rule of thumb, and we'll continue to update as we get more information. All right. Oh, really, I should go back. By the way, A meets. So B meets at the beginning of the season, we will go to B meets. They're usually one day. They do not count towards qualification for the postseason. So in some ways, you can see them as practice meets. I mean, their times still count. We will put them on athletic.net. We will track all those times, but just know that it's a practice meet, for lack of a better term. The kids are so expected to race and to race hard and to show up. None of that changes because that's all that gets them ready. But once we get to the later on in the season, the meets are 2 or even 3 days long. And those are A meets, and those will count towards qualification. And I'll explain that in a little bit, just know there's a difference between A and B meets. And in fact, I'll go in here and update this as well. So we for example, Long Beach Sprinters, that is a B meet. That's coming up early on. All right, parents, biggest support for you can do for your runners is this list here. Attendance to practice, right? I will say, and not just me, but I think anybody that coaches anything, but especially a running program, consistency is the #1 factor in success, period. So, which means showing up to practice and getting the runs in, right? So kids that miss often will not improve as much. Not saying they won't. Some are very talented and they'll improve some, but they won't improve as much as they could. the more they miss, the less they'll improve. The more they show up, the more they'll improve. That's just a basic thing. So attendance is super important. Attendance to races, like anything else, just like a practice, you practice racing. The more the kids race, especially because they're new to it, they will improve just by knowing how to race that race. For example, many kids went out way too fast during this first time trial. That's normal. Many of them will correct it. Others will struggle and take longer, but the more they show up, the more they do it, the more they'll realize, wait, this is what I need to do. And so that's going to help them. Attendance to bonding events. We haven't had a lot of these, if any, because of COVID, and we're hoping at some point we'll be able to do these. And I know some parents already started doing something like this. Like we can't get 180 kids together, even pre-COVID, right? It's just too many kids, but by group. So there will be group events. Try to get your kids to attend. I know it's hard. I know it's another thing to take them to, but bonding in any type of activity, especially sports and especially running, is super critical. People see running a lot of times as an individual sport. It is not. Connecting with your teammates is massive, and the results of that is huge. Hard to explain, but I've seen it over and over again. Kids that are connected do better, period. So make time to make sure, and we've had kids that, you know, that are shyer and quieter. Feel free to talk to the coaches or myself. If you see that your kid's a little isolated, bring it to our attention if we haven't caught that already. Make sure that we introduce them to other kids. We'll get them a buddy on the team, someone that's been there longer. Make sure they connect with the team. It makes a huge difference. Hard work over talent, parents. Emphasize that with your kids if you don't already, right? Yes, there's going to be some kids that will walk onto the team and run a 6:05 or something, right? There's going to be others that come onto the team and run a 12-minute mile, right? But working hard is what we want to focus everyone on, regardless of whether they come with a ton of natural talent or not. Working hard and how that is much more important than just having natural talent. I've seen it in my coaching career. I saw it at the high school level, kids that had incredible potential, just wasted completely. And others that didn't have the greatest natural ability, but they worked their butts off. And by senior year, they were out there scoring as our number 5 runner. You know, they didn't go out to break any school records. Maybe they didn't even go on to run collegiately, but they made an impact and they were better for it and stronger for it in their lives. So make sure we emphasize that. PRs over winning, right? I mean, absolutely, we want to win, right? We're competitive, coaches and kids alike, but there's 180 kids and there is thousands of kids just in our region alone that run. There's not going to be that many winners in races, right? So they're not always going to win. If all we care about is kids winning, it's going to be tough, right? Running is about PRs and continuing to improve it, and there will be wins, and there'll be big wins at some point. But that needs to be the emphasis for now, especially for parents. Long-term goals, right? What you did this week at the race is important, of course, but the long-term strategy, the goals that'll be accomplished a year from now, we want to focus the kids on that because it's going to take that long to get to where we want to be individually and as a team. Parents, leave strategy to coaches, please. And I say this knowing that it's not always going to happen, and we have no control. So also know that we're not going to fight you, parents, right? Some of you are going to coach your kids on the side and tell them what to do during the race and tell them what to do at practice and tell them what to do those things. We're not going to fight you on it because honestly, it's a waste of energy. But honestly, leave the strategy and the coaching to the coaches, leave the parenting to the parents. If we cross that line, let us know, but we're going to have the best interest in mind for your kids when it comes to running, right? As much as possible. And so, yeah, help us out with that because I will tell you, and I've seen it for years and years and years. I see it in their eyes. The struggle between a child that's trying to figure out to listen to coach or to listen to mom or dad it's a horrible situation to put a child in. And it's just something that we want to draw those lines as best we can. But again, we won't fight you on that. Make it at the end of the day, that's your kid. You're the parents. Make the decision you think is best for them. Positive feedback, right? There's some article that I was referred to, which I can't remember now, but it's like there is 10% of the population in the world that does respond to negative feedback and they do better because of it. Most don't. So telling a kid you did really bad today is probably not going to help. And obviously, your kid's better than we do, but for the most part, positive feedback is going to work. And it could be that they had a horrible race. Sometimes they do. We all do. And it's like, yeah, maybe things going to go that well, but guess what? We had a great kick at the end. That was good. And the rest we can improve on. And so we'll try to take that approach. Don't get me wrong. We will speak to kids about mistakes that are made. It's not that we avoid talking about the negative stuff, but we're going to focus on the positive feedback and how we correct the other issues. Sign up to help parents. We have a lot of activities throughout the year, fundraisers and planning for the banquet and planning for a bunch of other stuff. If you see things on Facebook or the weekly email, sorry, my voice is going. Some water there. Make sure you sign up and help, right? So there'll be parents that are kind of leading certain efforts. They'll need a lot of help, so just jump in and do that as well. Off season, I just added this at the last minute because I never know when to talk about this. I know the off season is really far away, but I'll use this opportunity to talk about that. The amount of running that kids do during the winter time while we're not in session, or during the summer when we're not in session, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks or whatever it is, super critical to their success. We had kids that struggled to come back and even make the group that they were in last season. And more than likely, I can't speak to every single kid, I don't know the situations, it's because they didn't run for, in some cases, 12 weeks without running, depending on when they stopped their season. That's going to set them really, really far back. And the motivation level is going to be really hard to pick up, because they're going to come back and realize that they're much slower than they were before. The kids that ran during the offseason come back really strong, some of them amazingly strong. I'm wondering what they did in the offseason. And they tend to get a better start in their season overall.
You have to take a shower.
Okay, please go on mute because I don't want to take a shower, but I already did. But yeah, make sure if you're not talking, go on mute, please. All right, I'll switch back. Any questions here, parents? All right, nutrition. I'll go through this quickly. Hydration, 8 glasses of water a day. Balanced meals for the kids. Don't do the whole carb loading thing, parents. They're not running marathons. So the day before a race, don't stuff them with 3 bowls of pasta. That's only going to give them an upset stomach the next day. Just balanced meals, healthy meals, and not just the day before a race, but every day. Hydration is the big one, right? Make sure they drink water. I know most kids don't. I know I didn't as a kid. I was horrible at it, and I still struggle today. But get everybody in the habit of drinking more water. No dieting, parents. I know parents. Some of the kids we have, and one of the reasons you put them in the program was to get them in shape and get them healthy. That's great, and that's wonderful. We support that. But don't put them on a really strict diet, meaning like really low calories and then running the way we're trying to run. Those don't go well together. They never do. In fact, there's a lot of controversy at the collegiate level with coaches that purposely did that with like their female athletes, for example. So they would get skinnier and lighter and can run faster. It backfires in every way. Running will burn calories. Just make sure they're eating healthy, right? And they'll be fine. Iron level for runners. So I'm going to say this, coaches are not doctors. We're not doctors in any way. So please don't take anything that seems like medical advice is not medical advice. It is experience from what I've seen. What I will say when it comes to iron levels is, even if your kid gets tested and the doctor says it's normal for a normal kid, those iron levels for runners, they need higher levels of iron. So it's something that you can bring up to your doctor. More progressive doctors understand that. If they're runners, they really understand that. So sometimes when we see kids that are really fatigued, all of a sudden get a drop in performance. Typically with kind of our older girls, we see that as well, but just be cautious of that. And then that may be an explanation for that. And there is iron supplements they can take. I'll leave it at that. If you want to have more, detailed discussions, we can, or more importantly, speak with your doctor about that. And eating well before and after races, like in other words, don't eat too much before a race, but eat something. And after a big workout or a fast race, make sure the kids get nutrition quickly, right? So don't have them run a race and then they don't eat for another 8 hours. Like that's not good for the body. It's as soon as they can get food and good nutrition in them, the quicker they'll start recovering from that effort. All right, training gone wrong. These are some of the things that we like to point out. Some of them are basic, right? Like too much too soon, right? So if we get a brand new runner, even if they're really high performing and they're out there doing great the first week, and we throw them into Eagle because they're doing great and they're running now 5-6 miles every practice, we're going to get them hurt. We're going to get them burnt out. They're not going to do well. They're not going to improve the way they're supposed to. Same thing about too fast. Some kids, a lot of kids get really excited at practice and they're out there like racing each other. That's also not good. So we really work on trying to slow them down and so on. We want them to run in a training pace and not a race pace during practice. Again, running too fast too soon can actually injure a kid as well. Short-term gains instead of long-term success, right? And I'll give you an example of that, something that we try to hold true here. We're going to emphasize getting mileage in a base. We call it a base. In other words, it's just kind of running slow, longer mileage, at the beginning of the season, and then we'll start introducing it, and not too long, right? But we'll start introducing speed workouts. Other programs that we compete against, they go right into speed workouts right off the bat. They do sometimes, some teams do speed workouts every single practice. And yes, short term, that works. Absolutely. For that first or second or even third season of doing that, kids are going to improve tremendously fast. At the beginning of the season, they'll be really fast. By the end of the season, they're typically burnt out and they don't run as well. By the end of 2-3 years of doing that, they'll plateau and they won't improve at all anymore. And they'll start going backwards. The base, think of it as a pyramid. That base needs to be at the bottom. If not, that peak never reaches really high. And that's just one example. So we need to be careful of that. Performance focused motivation. If all, as coaches, all we talk about is your time, or all we talk about is their placement during the race, it tends to burn out kids really fast. So we want to find other motivation for the kids. And that's on everybody, parents, coaches, all of us, with the kids figuring out what their motivation is, right? But performance is a factor, but it's not the only one. And then the other one is multiple programs, parents. And again, I know we won't fight you on this, but getting your coaches, additional coaches, or putting them in 2 programs at once, having competing coaches, giving them different types of workouts or conflicting workouts throughout the week is going to hurt them. It's not going to help them. In some cases, they run for their schools, right? Like their junior highs or something like that. Work with us. A lot of those school programs or teachers that are just kind of taking on that program, they're more than happy to hear from us. I've had conversations before with some of those programs, and we can work through that and make sure that we don't hurt the kids by running them too much, or programs that are conflicting with each other. Fundraising. So this is something that we'll have about 1 a month, right? And it varies, but there should be something. So make sure, 1, you're looking at the calendar, 2, that you're watching the emails and Facebook and all that, and then you participate. A lot of these are really easy ones, right? You just show up and order some food and you can go home right away if you want to, and a percentage goes back to the team. So that's usually easy and easy to do. Fundraising is going to, depending on the situation and what that season entails and what we need. Like this year, for example, we need canopies, right? And so we've ordered canopies, but the funds go towards the banquet, towards snacks. This last year, by the way, we had this really nice banquet. If you're new, it was our first, like, actually in a hall, like, a big stage type of presentation. It was really nice, and we hope to continue to do that, but that costs money. The national trip, race registrations for the postseason, coaching stipends and things like that, all that comes out of the team funds. And so fundraising will pay for a lot of those items as well. Budget breakdown for this season, we've been kind of trying to figure out how to do it, because one of the issues we've had is we get to the end of the season and then we're trying to figure out how to pay for nationals. So right off the bat, we're going to do 20% of all fundraisers will be set aside for the national trip bucket, basically, and 80% will go to general funds. And there may be some exceptions, right? We figured there's a different purpose or something in particular. An example is the Super Bowl one, right? We did 50% for nationals and 50% for general funds. And there'll be some probably at the end of the season, right? When we usually do those, there'll also be maybe 100% for nationals, right? And they'll be very focused on that. But throughout the season, the typical fundraisers, we're going to do that split and kind of allocate that money that way. So again, support all the fundraisers. But by the way, if you haven't signed up for the Super Bowl one, please do. And you can win some money along the way too, right? So it's never a bad thing. All right, we're getting close to the end, parents. I know this is something a lot of you want to see. This is different now post-COVID. So a lot of you, even if you're not new this season, you haven't had to deal with this. This is how it used to be, but during COVID, a lot of this disappeared. And I know this is not very legible. I'll get you better copies of it. But in order to qualify for the association championships, it is done by time that they have to run an A meet. So if you go look at here, just an example, right? Like the 7-8 girls, they in the 1500, which we run a lot of, they have to run a 651.4. Okay, so if they run in an A meet, not in a B meet, not in a time trial, not at practice, not at school, if they run it in an A meet and they break that time, they will be allowed to participate in the first postseason meet, which is the association championships. So we can have 1 kid qualify, we can have 25 kids in that age group qualify. It's just a matter of them breaking that time. Okay, there is one exception to that. If the association gets basically overwhelmed, the rule I think is, I want to say it's 6. If they have to field more than 6 heats of runners for that one age group and one gender, then they will take the top runners to fill those 6 heats. So it may be a kid that qualifies, but it's at the bottom of the barrel, meaning they ran a 6:51.2, and they are the 121st runner, and they're only taking the top 100, then maybe dropped off of that. That rarely happens, but it's part of the rules, so you're aware of that. And again, it varies by gender and it varies by age group. For the most part, it gets harder. So see that, I don't know if you can see that very well, but we'll get you better copies.
Quick question on these events, Coach.
Yeah.
Will we be competing at all of these events, or
No.
are we just picking and choosing?
No, so we're a distance program. We compete in distance events. So we will do mostly the 1500 and the 3000 is what we focus in. We will run some of the younger kids in the 800s. And we will do relays, by the way. A few people have asked about that. So in the past, we didn't have enough kids to field enough. We have to have 4 kids in the same gender, same age group. Now we do, so we have plenty now. So we will go to some events and run the kids in, let's say, a 1500, and then later on the day they'll run in a relay. It could be a 4x800, 4x4, or something like that. But the distance events, yes. Any other questions? Okay, and then the other part to this is, so this is the time to qualify for the association championships. That once they do that, they run at the association championships, and then it gets really tough. And I haven't seen the rules for this season, but I don't think it's going to change. It's usually top 6 at regionals move on. I'm sorry, at association championships, top 6 in each event, each gender, each age group will move on to regionals, right? And then at regionals, same thing. Top 6 there move on to nationals. And this year, nationals will be in Sacramento, which is kind of nice. It's in our state. So also this is for returning parents, especially cross country. You saw that for the first time ever, we took massive amount of kids to nationals. A big part of it was just cross country and the nature of the sport, right? We take teams, and we finally had teams that we could field. COVID played a little bit of a role in that, but for the most part, we took teams, and we ended up with 52 kids, I think it was, that we took 51, 52. It was a number of kids that we took there. For track, do not have that expectation. It's going to be really tough to make it, assuming nothing changes drastically and all these rules stay in motion. It's going to be tough. If we get 10 kids to go, I'm going to be shocked and super happy. But it's going to be hard. If you can see the progression here, just making the qualifying time is going to be hard, but a lot of our kids will make it. Moving on to the top 6 out of the teams in especially in the region is going to be really tough. Like I said, we have national record holders, not just national champions, but national record holders running in this area. So it's going to be tough, but we'll get some in there. Right. Any other questions?
One more question. I know that it's near impossible with the size of the team that we have, but will they be getting any practice on a track?
Yes. So, well, okay. Yes, we want to. I'm going to say that. So COVID has been our biggest battle in doing that. We are asking again, both, well, all 3, La Mirada, Cal High, and Lucerna. And we're trying to figure out which one will allow us to, and you're right, the number of kids is an issue. I'm very concerned about that because we just don't want to end up in a bad situation, right? With that many kids and disrupting and then being kicked out of there. But we are looking, for example, one of the things we're thinking about is trying to get a hold of a track that allows us to use it on Wednesdays, which is when we do speed workouts. And then we will take probably the top 3 groups, so Eagle, Jaguar, and Rabbit to do that at that time. And so we'll get them ready. But that's an option right now. We're trying to see what they allow, what we can work out. There's a lot of logistical things that may make us stop that, right? For example, parents that have 2 kids on the team, one that's in dog and one that's in Eagle, how do they manage dropping off at 2 different places at the same time, right? And then picking up at 2 different places, it becomes much harder. Not impossible, but harder. So we'll work through that, but yes, that is our intent, to try to get us to a track to do speed workouts at least on Wednesdays. So, the other issue too is that our kids are running more mileage than they did 2 years ago or 3 years before COVID, when we were on a track during the track season. And so let's say we met there every day. Let's say they're like, yeah, bring your whole team and come every day, no big deal. Now we're having kids running 5 or 6 miles and possibly more around in a track or around the neighborhood of the school, which may not be the best place and very safe. Whereas we have a regional park where we can run the larger mileage. So a lot of things to consider, but yes, we're trying to get there. Any other questions? Right, so what I wanted to do is really quickly show you 2 things. So on our website, we're eliteracing.com, and you ever want to hear the story behind that, it's at some point we're going to have to change the whole domain name, but that's a lot of work, and we'll get to that. But for now, that is our website. But if you go into this is our actual, youth section, which is really what we emphasize the team on, and this is where a lot of youth found us and eventually registered. But underneath that section, you can go to schedule here, and you'll find our calendar, right? And we'll try to keep this updated. And again, this is what we saw earlier, and it's got all the way to the postseason. So if you go at the bottom, you'll actually see the dates for the postseason. So one thing I didn't mention earlier, I'll mention right now is parents, if you think your kids have any chance of making the postseason, please set these dates aside. I know that's vacation time, but try to make sure and set these aside, because I think it'd be sad, right, if a kid makes it and then can't go because not because they didn't make it, but because some other plans. So try to set. I know it's hard, and I know there's a chance they may not make it, but there's also a chance they may make it. So, and if you don't know, like if you're not sure how the probability of your kids making it, we can give you a guesstimate. Right now it's going to be harder. 2 months from now, probably a little easier. And we'll see how things are playing out and seeing how the rest of the Legion's doing and the rest of the runners and the different teams are doing. So that's one thing. The other place to look at too is under training, we have the Warrior Youth Series training, and it's really weird. Okay, anyway, we'll add more things in here, but these are all videos on how to do lunch matrix, Myrtle, some of the things that the kids are learning at practice if they're new, or just reinforcing the ones that they don't know. So we'll keep adding stuff in there. We'll post this on Facebook and put it in the weekly email. I should have put it in something actually, but I forgot, but I will do that. So that's our website, different things in there. The other thing is athletic.net. So as far as your kids' results in the races, we're going to we will always put all their results there, whether it's a time trial, an all-comers, an A meet, a B meet, all the results will be there. If you ever see anything that looks strange or wrong, please bring it to our attention. But you're able to go to our team page. So again, look us up as Whittier Warriors Track Club and athletic.net. Our race calendar is usually here, races that our kids are participating in. Like here's the all-comers. And you can click through like the 1600, and you'll see kids that were participating there, like this Whittier Warriors Track Club, and you start seeing more of our kids through all this. The other one that's always fun, well, the other thing you can do, so I'll show you right now, but is go to records by event. And I know the more competitive parents will do this all the time. You can see where your kid stands up in terms of the rest of the team. So it puts it in order by event, top times all the way down. And so you can see that. And then you can click on your kids' names. I'm gonna pick on Arturo. And then see all the different events and races that Arturo's ran before, right? Or any of the kids. You should be able to get basically a biography or a resume, a running resume for your kids as well. And I think that's it, parents. Yeah, so parents, open up for questions, and we're almost on time. So general questions, again, personal questions we can read afterwards at practice or so on.
I have a question. So something that was kind of new this meet, and my son mentioned it too, that he got a little hungry. Because it was going on maybe about 4 hours since he ate something light in the morning. So by the time he came out, his race came around, he was a little hungry. So he actually mentioned that to me, and I did kind of think of that, but since there's no food allowed out there, so I was wondering if other meets are going to be like that, or should we get access to them at some point for them to get another light snack, like maybe 30 minutes before their heat may start or something like that?
Yeah, so I mean, this last meet, but I will tell you it's normal, but this last meet went way longer than it should have. I mean, the time between races was like 10 minutes. It should be like a minute or two. So it dragged out much longer than it should have. But yeah, I will tell you, cross country compared to track, cross country, we can give you pretty good estimates of when the events will go. And so we can kind of, we'll, right, us and yourselves as parents, right, can better figure out food and even water intake and going to the restroom and all those things. With track meets, they won't necessarily all be as bad as this one, but some will, and some will be worse. And we'll be waiting around for a long time, and we're guessing at when we're doing warm-ups. It's the nature of track meets, and this is the nature of USATF track meets especially. So yes, and your son was not the only one. We heard a number of kids were hungry. And it's hard, right? Because if they go and they eat something too much, now they have a full stomach and they're having to run a race. But yeah, parents, well, normally we're gonna have to kind of figure out a way of doing this right. If we see that happening, and like an all-comers meet, we could easily send them back to you in the stands and they could come back. The part that's hard with that, right, is just coordinating 180 kids and going, okay, where did so-and-so go? Why didn't they come back? Go find them. We can't send coaches back and forth trying to find kids that don't come back. Not to mention we're losing track of your kids at the same time. At USATF meets, once they check in, we can't get to them anymore. Even coaches, we're not allowed to go onto the trial. Like we did at the all-comers, you will not see us at a USAT meet inside. They will not allow any coaches, even with the little ones, which is something I've argued for years and no one listens to me. But it's just the way it is. And so we're gonna have to kind of do our best at figuring some of that out. I will say as a general rule of thumb, the kids should not be on a completely empty stomach. So they should have something when they wake up in the morning. But yes, like in the case you brought up, right, like they did have something, but now it's been 4 hours and they haven't had anything since then. So we'll have to play it by ear, and as the meet progresses, and as the season progresses, we see how they do. We'll have to get better at saying, okay, hold on, we're not going to warm up yet. Stay with your parents, and we'll try to keep you informed. Saying, hey, it's looking like another hour and a half delay. The kids can have something really, really light. Let's do that now, type of thing. So,
thank you.
And it's not a great answer, but it is a great question, and we'll try to kind of play that by ear. Other general questions like that, parents, that you have? Coaches that are on the call, anything I'm forgetting, because I have no idea. Is there anything else that we've talked about mentioning? Or
Rojas.
Rojas.
I'm sorry. Can you explain kind of the rule of thumb to parents when we put on our spikes? I'm often getting questions about warm up and when they put them on.
That's a great question. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So parents, especially for new parents. So we talked about earlier about trainers versus the spikes or the racing shoe. Not just for practice. The trainer should be worn by kids when they show up to the meet. They should be warming up in them. They should really only take them off right before they race. So basically, if we say, hey, okay, kids, let's go 8 and under. We're gonna go warm you up. Go with Coach Terry. Everybody goes with Coach Terry. They should be wearing their trainers and carrying their spikes if they have some, right? In a bag or loose or however it is, but bring it with them so they don't have to come back and try to find them later on. We'll then warm up the kids. They'll continue to wear their trainers. Once they're done, we will put on the spikes, and then we may have them do strides to make sure that it's not too tight, not too loose, things like that, but they won't be running mileage ever with the spikes themselves, if that makes sense, or the flat. Yeah, good question. Somebody else I think was speaking up too.
Coach Rojas, could you remind, maybe repeat the Facebook post you made about the need for coaches?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah, big thank you, right? So yes, we definitely need coaches in general. So we need help with practice, right? So we need more parents running, especially with Monkey and with Rabbit. But we are looking for at least one actual coach. I mean, meaning we're going to get you a jacket. We're going to get you into coaches' meetings. We're going to get you helping during meets, not just at practice. You'll kind of become part of the coaching staff, so to speak. But we are looking for a coach to help out with one of the group. You won't be leading a group, you'll be assisting or helping out with that group. But we do need at least one other, hopefully 2. So again, we're not looking for a coaching resume necessarily. If you have it, even better, right? But we are looking for someone that enjoys kids and can get along and can communicate well with kids and energetic and all that good stuff. So if anybody's interested, speak to me on the side, speak to me at practice. If you have concerns, ask about that. But we do need some additional help. All right, anything else? Is there something in the chat? I just saw it. Oh, just a thank you. All right, anything else, parents? All right, thank you very much. I can't believe we actually finished on time. We're pretty close to it. Again, individual questions, please ask, text, phone calls, emails, conversations after practice or before sometimes as well. And yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate your support and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, thanks everyone.